How many? A few? A couple? This guy on May 30th of 2020, the White House was under siege. It was attacked. Over 100 Secret Service agents injured. They were burning down stations. This guy said, "Oh, well, Trump had to go hide out in his bunker." Can you imagine if the roles were reversed and Donald Trump came out and was like, "Oh, AOC had to go hide. Oh, these politicians had to go hide." He doesn't care about political violence. The left doesn't care about political violence at all. They'll use it when it's expedient for them. They always do, pointing to a couple of bad actors at this thing and saying all of them have to be thrown away. And, the key thrown away with them is insanity. And no, I don't think so. I think it's a miscategorization.
That is the sound of the entire Democratic narrative collapsing in real time. Andrew Wilson just dropped the one comparison Cenk Uygur and the entire progressive media never want to face. The 30th of May, 2020. White House under attack. Over 100 Secret Service agents injured. Police stations burned. And the same voices now screaming about January 6th stayed almost completely silent. Stay right here. What follows is Cenk trying to rewrite history while Andrew keeps feeding him the facts the left buried for 4 years.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of problems here. So the first problem is these were not violent criminals who were released. These were political prisoners who were released. What happened is there was no fair application of the law whatsoever. These guys were being tried in D.C. There was a political witch hunt. We have more evidence every single day which provides for that. And why these guys are busy now complaining and showing us, oh, down here on the border, we have a mom crying because she might be separated from her kid. Nobody's commenting on the fact that we have a ton of families that just got reunited. And on behalf of all of the Wilsons of the world, welcome home, January 6ers. It's guys like this that wanted to put you away in a dark hole, absent due process, and throw away the key. These were not violent criminals. By the way,
well, hang on. Okay, but Andrew, hang on. Let me just stop you there. So I actually interviewed one of the protesters, Jacob, who was the QAnon shaman guy. And I also had a Capitol police officer who'd been working that day. And what they both agreed, very interestingly, was that they both condemned the violence against police officers that day. So if you can have one of the protesters who've just been pardoned concede that the violence that was perpetrated by some of the protesters was wrong, unacceptable, and should be condemned, why would you categorize it as non-violent?
Well, I didn't categorize it as non-violent. I said these are not violent criminals, which is how it's being framed.
But if you're perpetrating violence against police officers, it is, isn't it?
What? How many? A few? A couple? This guy on May 30th of 2020, the White House was under siege. It was attacked. Over 100 Secret Service agents injured. They were burning down stations. This guy said, "Oh, well, Trump had to go hide out in his bunker." Can you imagine if the roles were reversed and Donald Trump came out and was like, "Oh, AOC had to go hide. Oh, these politicians had to go hide"? He doesn't care about political violence. The left doesn't care about political violence at all. They'll use it when it's expedient for them. They always do, pointing to a couple of bad actors at this thing and saying all of them have to be thrown away. And, the key thrown away with them is insanity. And no, I don't think so. I think it's a miscategorization to frame all of them as violent criminals. And that's
they weren't all violent at all. I mean,
that's what he was doing. That's what he was framing it, though.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't, and Cenk, I do not agree with that. I don't think all the 1,500 were violent. In fact, we know for a fact they weren't. A lot of them were not convicted of violence.
Yeah, I didn't say that at all.
You did say that.
So, look, no, all right, whatever, dude. So on the Young Turks, we've been super clear about this, and as always, we're the one guys set of people who are fair. You'll see both sides do all this extreme stuff like Andrew's doing. So first of all, the people who went to the speech of Donald Trump, a lot of times they get thrown into this, and I have always said, no, that's not fair. They didn't go down to the Capitol. For the people who went to the Capitol, it's an obvious crime to break into the Capitol, and why were they doing that? They were trying to overturn the results of the election. So you could blah, blah, blah on all your talking points, but it's absurdity. Obviously, they were trying to hurt our democracy. They were trying to steal that election. And were some of them violent? Were all of them violent? No. Were some of them violent? Obviously. We have eyes and ears. So you can do all the propaganda you want, but we just watch the tape of them trying to beat the crap out of the cops. I thought you guys cared about cops. I care about crime. I'm against crime. And, and we take heat sometimes from the left. because they think that crime is a right-wing narrative and doesn't actually exist. Well, the voters just showed you it does exist, and they're pissed about it. But they're also pissed about it when you go beat up cops for Trump. So look, I'm past it because the American people voted. They put Trump back in office, and that's pretty definitive. I didn't want that, but it happened, right? But if you're going to try to do revisionist history, that these were some patriots who showed up for a picnic, but oh golly gee, there was a Capitol, so they started to bust in and beat the living crap out of the cops, and oh, he lost the election, but oh no, it was stolen, so they go and try to do a coup attempt. I hate it. I think it's a terrible precedent, and I think every time you guys defend it, you sound absurd, and it sounds like overwhelming, ridiculous propaganda.
Andrew?
Yeah, what it's about is a fair application of law. And there has not been fair application of law here. Cenk himself cannot even do fair application of law. At the same time, he says, oh, you're trying to coup and overthrow the democracy. It's exactly what happened May 30th when they were attacking the White House. They were attacking Secret Service agents. They wanted to get in there. And all he could do was whine about how Trump had to get sent to a bunker. Where was his outrage about the coup d'etat? Where was he when Black Lives Matter was burning down cities?
Was no coup
Nowhere.
On May 30th.
It was
a protest.
He was saying instead, Cenk, I didn't interrupt you once. Do you think he calmed down for me? So anyway, what's going on, very simply, is that he has the revisionist history. While at the same time, the Democrats are saying, you got to stay home and stay masked up. They're telling other people, go outside, burn down cities, make Chaz chop, a nice free independent zone. I don't know how you could say that that's anything other than an insurrection to say that this is now no longer part of the United States government, have your own armed militia there. The entire 9 yards, May 30th, they attack. And this guy says nothing. Suddenly, J6, though, oh my God, they're violent extremists. They're going to overthrow democracy. It's all nonsense. It's not fairly applied. He's never fairly applied it. The law has never been fairly applied to the J6ers. They were tried in D.C., not in front of impartial juries.
There it is. The full, unfiltered version of the two-tier justice system Democrats built and still defend. Andrew Wilson laid it out cold. Political prisoners in D.C. Courts with 0 impartial juries versus the 2020 Summer of Love that left over 100 Secret Service agents injured and the White House under siege. Cenk's response? A few bad actors. That's the same phrase they used while Portland burned for 100 nights, and Chaz declared itself an independent zone with its own armed militia. Cenk sat there and tried to lecture about fair application of the law, while the side he still defends treated actual violence as activism when it wore the right color shirt. Notice how fast he pivoted to I care about cops the second the cameras were rolling. Where was that energy when officers were taking bricks to the head in 2020? Nowhere. Because for the modern Democrat, violence is only violence when it threatens their power. When it serves their narrative, it becomes mostly peaceful. Andrew kept hammering the only point that matters. The law was never applied equally. 1,000 people can walk free, so one guilty person doesn't sit in prison. That is the actual American legal tradition. The left abandoned it. The second Trump supporters became the defendants. That is not justice. That is political revenge dressed up as democracy. And every time Cenk opens his mouth to defend it, he proves exactly why voters finally said enough.
And here's how our law works. Our law works like this. 1,000 walk free, so one guilty person doesn't spend a day in prison. That is the precedent for our law. That's why they got pardoned, and it's exactly why they should have.
Yeah, and Andrew, on the ending the birthright citizenship.
Can I just address
hang on, Cenk. I'll come to you in a moment. Response. On what Cenk mentioned also about the ending the birthright citizenship is one of the executive orders. Do you think Trump intends to do that? Because it seems to me he's already won the debate about illegal immigrants who are here are criminals in America.
Yep.
Everyone pretty much agrees they should be sent back, including the million who've already been processed but haven't been deported yet. So all of that seems to be very popular, but there is a lot of anger about the idea that you may end what seems to be a very American thing, the very ethos of the country, this birthright citizenship. What do you feel?
It's a very un-American thing. The 14th, or I'm sorry, this was never, by the way, never set up so that people could come in, have a baby, and then anchor themselves to the child. And that's what's been going on. And it's been going on for years. We know it's been going on for years. This was designed for things like for immigrants who came in legally. They have children here. Of course, those are United States citizens. Nobody's disputing that. What we're disputing is that you can just come in illegally, have a child on American soil, and then try to anchor yourself to that child. That is not in the spirit of what we're even talking about. Of course, Trump wants to end it. It's bad policy across the board. It's always been bad policy across the board. And I hope the Supreme Court, it gets challenged by the Supreme Court so we could get it in front of them so that they can interpret it correctly, because that's not the way this is supposed to be applied.
Cenk?
Yeah, so first let me address what he said, and then I'll come back to this. So look, guys, what happened on May 30th was nothing but a protest. But if they attack Secret Service guys, then they should be arrested. That's a violent crime. I'm principled on both of those things. And in Portland, when they took over a portion of the city, I was against it. Like, well, that's not a thing. You don't get to take over a portion of a city. I was against it when gangs took over apartment complexes and buildings in Colorado. So if Trump stays with things that the American people are in favor of, getting rid of the violent felons that are undocumented here, that's going to be very popular, whether the left likes it or doesn't like it, right? But when he goes too far and he goes to things like birthright citizenship, then people are going to push back. And that's when it gets interesting. Is Trump going to double down and go, no, I'm going to, go to demagogue on this and get you people to hate foreigners coming in, et cetera, and I don't care what the Constitution says, and we're going to change the way America is, and you're no longer an American if you're born here. We're going to judge you based on, where you're from, et cetera. That'll be very unpopular. Does he dig in, or does he, as he does sometimes, go, man, you know what, I gave it a shot, didn't work, and retract? I hope that that's the direction he goes, because look, brother, if you have a problem with a part of the Constitution, you need to go through the right process. You need to go and do an amendment. Like, I want to do an amendment to get money out of politics. But when Biden was in office, I didn't think he should just come in and go, forget what the Supreme Court said. Forget what the Constitution said. Let's go nuts and do whatever the hell we want. That's not how it works.
Well, gee, I never thought about that. I didn't know that we were supposed to go through a process of law for these things, which is exactly what Trump is doing via his executive order, which then hopefully will get it in front of the Supreme Court, which looks like that's what the plan is.
That's part of the legal process.
By the way, just so you know, the interpretation of this, that's what we're really talking about, is the interpretation. Ultimately here, it is not, and you need to agree with me on this, it is not in the spirit that you can come in and have a child here and anchor yourself to the child specifically so that you have some pathway or motivation to citizenship. You say it's not a part of the legal process. Yes, these challenges, getting in front of the Supreme Court, getting in front of various courts, is part of the process. It's been done this way time and time and time again. Also, I reject categorically what you said, just lied to the audience. You called Trump bunker boy, right? He was going down to the bunker during the protest to inspect it. Ha, 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 right? You didn't care at all.
Yeah.
You weren't denouncing political violence. You weren't denouncing these people getting beat up. You didn't care when the violence is on your side like a typical Democrat. You don't care at all, Cenk. You don't care. And you've never cared. The only reason you care now is because you want to kiss.
And I condemn it every time people do violence.
Call it snake.
Literally
okay,
every
I'll say
time.
Snake. But the thing is, Snake, is that you're just trying to kiss the right wing's ass now to get back in with them because the left has categorically rejected you, and that's what's actually happening.
Watch Cenk try to claw back some moral high ground. Suddenly, he's principled about violence. Suddenly, he's against taking over cities. Suddenly, he cares about Secret Service agents. Too late. The record is permanent. The same progressive media ecosystem that platformed Cenk spent years soft-pedaling riots, bail funds, and fiery but mostly peaceful coverage while demanding maximum sentences for anyone who walked into the Capitol. Andrew Wilson didn't invent the double standard. He simply refused to pretend it didn't exist. And that is why this exchange hits so hard. One side still believes in equal application of the law. The other side believes in power. Cenk can call it revisionist history all he wants. The footage from 2020 is not revisionist. The injured officers are not revisionist. The burned police stations are not revisionist. The only thing being revised is the left's memory of its own behavior. Republicans didn't create the two-tier system. Democrats did. And every time they scream about January 6 while staying quiet about the actual sustained political violence of 2020, they remind the country exactly why Trump's pardons were not only justified, they were necessary.